Welcome back to the AI Daily Brief Headlines Edition, all the daily AI news you need in around 5 minutes. We kick off today with a fairly big victory for Anthropic in their copyright case as a federal judge rules that AI training is fair use. Now, Anthropic is one of the many AI labs that are fighting with authors and publishers over their use of copyrighted works and training data. Each lab is running effectively the same argument that AI training is analogous to reading and is therefore not a breach of copyright under fair use provisions. A federal judge has now accepted that argument, handing Anthropic an early victory in the case. Christina Frohock, a professor of legal writing at the University of Miami School of Law, explained, "The court treats the AI as akin to a human learning from copyrighted material. It's fair use if you and I pick up a book and read it and develop our own thoughts." She said the court came to the same conclusion about AI models. In handing down the ruling, the judge commented that the, quote, author's complaint is no different than it would be if they complained that training school children to write well would result in an explosion of competing works. He noted that copyright law, quote, seeks to advance original works of authorship, not to protect authors against competition. Now, all that said, this is only a partial victory for Anthropic. The order was only decided on this extremely narrow piece of law, with a further dispute in the case going to a separate trial. That trial will deal with what Anthropic refers to as their central library, a corpus of all the books in the world used to create training datasets. As well as scanning in physical books, plaintiffs claim Anthropic pirated 7 million digital copies to create this repository. In a prelude of what's to come, the judge wrote, "This order doubts that any accused infringer could ever meet its burden of explaining why downloading source copies from pirate sites that could have been purchased or otherwise accessed lawfully was itself reasonably necessary to any subsequent fair use. According to the copyright law, willful infringement can carry a maximum penalty of $150,000 per work. If the court rules that Anthropic breached copyright millions of times in pirating books, the fines could easily bankrupt the startup." The judge noted that the fact that, quote, Anthropic later bought a copy of a book it earlier stole off the internet will not absolve it of liability for theft, but it may affect the extent of statutory damages. One of the interesting points to note is that the fair use ruling was based on Anthropic's AI outputs being transformative. That is, the AI model wasn't capable of directly reproducing copyrighted works. It was trained to create something new out of its training data. In fact, the judge referred to Claude's outputs as exceedingly transformative, noting, like any reader aspiring to be a writer, Anthropic's LLMs trained upon works not to race ahead and replicate or supplant them, but to turn a hard corner and create something different. So ultimately, Anthropic is far from off the hook, and the law is far from settled, but it is still a landmark ruling for the AI copyright question. Importantly, this is only a ruling in federal court, so it isn't binding in other cases and could still be appealed. However, it can be used to persuade other judges to follow this interpretation of the law for the time being. Obviously, this is and remains a contentious area, one in which I fully anticipate we will need to have end up before the Supreme Court before we actually finally know how it will be handled. Next up, staying on the law train for a moment, Sam Altman is fighting the IO lawsuit on X. The legal battle surrounding Johnny Ive's AI device startup and the identically named Google spinoff is starting to get a little bit nasty. Lawsuit filings are now circulating, but Sam Altman decided to take his version of the story direct. Yesterday he posted, "Jason Rugolo had been hoping we would invest in or acquire his company IO, IYO, and was quite persistent in his efforts. We passed and were clear along the way. Now he is suing OpenAI over the name. This is silly, disappointing, and wrong. I made a lot of time to talk to Jason on his repeated outreaches because I like helping founders. A few days before the lawsuit, he asked again for us to acquire his company, even after we tried to pass just before. It is cool to try super hard to raise money or get acquired, and to do whatever you can to make your company succeed. It is not cool to turn to a lawsuit when you don't get what you want. Sets a terrible precedent for trying to help the ecosystem. All that said, I wish Jason and his team the best building great products. The world certainly needs more of that and less lawsuits." OpenAI's legal filings, meanwhile, tell basically the same story. That technical staff at IO, this new OpenAI division, met with Rugolo out of a sense of professional courtesy, were unimpressed with a broken demo, and moved on to build something other than what they had seen. In Rugolo's responses on Twitter, he basically said it was about the name. In one post he wrote, "There are 675 other two-letter names that they can choose that aren't ours." And basically, if you want to read on how the community thinks about this, I think that on the one hand, after Sam shared these emails, the OpenAI side of the story that they just weren't all that impressed looks pretty resonant, or at least true from what they were discussing internally. But at the same time, people also kind of feel like, hey, did you have to choose a name that close? Ultimately, my guess is that it's not worth the trouble and OpenAI just changes the name, but what do I know? One more interesting thing on OpenAI. The company has quietly designed a productivity suite for ChatGPT, which could put them in direct competition with big backers like Microsoft. The features would allow users to collaborate on documents and communicate with each other, similar to the functionality of Microsoft Office, or maybe even more directly, Google Workspace. The information reports that no decision has been made about launching the feature, but a release could drive a further wedge in OpenAI's relationship with their backer, Microsoft. In some ways, though, this is just a natural extension of the Canvas feature, which gives users a separate document window inside ChatGPT, making the assistant more useful in work settings. It would also allow OpenAI to compete to be an everything app. Coincidentally, we got news earlier this week that xAI is working on a productivity suite as well. So is this some big competitive change? Or is it just that all of these products are trending towards the same direction and are going to have some similar features? I tend to think it's more that than any sort of big new competition between these two frenemies. Last up, a couple of product updates before we get to the main episode. First, Airtable have made a major move, relaunching as an AI native app. CEO Howie Liu posted, "Instead of just adding more AI capabilities to our existing platform, we treated this as a refounding moment for the company. We started with a clean slate imagining of the ideal form factor for building apps in the agentic era. The no-code database platform is now a fully functional vibe coding app as well. Users can now use natural language to prompt apps into existence, while integrating them into Airtable's production-ready components." Liu gave the examples of creating a VC deal tracker that does automated company research, or a marketing campaign manager that monitors all relevant competitors. The AI integration also means you can easily run queries across your database. For example, you can get the assistant to crunch thousands of support tickets to find common pain points quickly. The rebuild also adds agentic functionality built in to help you manage large data workflows. Howie wrote, "When the cost of making and continually evolving apps drops to zero, everything changes. Companies will build exactly what they need rather than settling for rigid off-the-shelf software. The new default is AI-generated apps plus built-in AI agents working 24/7. What's needed in this new era is a new form factor and paradigm for software, the AI-native app platform. This is the new Airtable." And what's launching today is just the beginning. We're excited to release a slew of new AI-powered capabilities in the months ahead. Sneak peek, generate any visualization, agents leveraging MCP, agentically sourced datasets, and much, much more. Another company getting all agentic is 11 Labs, who have launched a new voice AI assistant called 11 AI. The pitch is that this voice assistant has full MCP integration, so can pull data from services including Perplexity, Slack, Gmail, and Google Calendar. You can even connect your own MCP servers so the assistant can theoretically access anything you want it to. Functionally, this is pretty similar to the voice assistant that Anthropic announced earlier last month, alongside the launch of Voice Mode. It's designed as a voice interface to access all sorts of AI functionality. The advertising is even similar. Anthropic advertised their product as being able to help power a young professional through their morning, while the 11 Labs ad followed a similar story but featuring a young man rolling out of bed with 5 minutes to spare until a web conference with his boss. The assistant helped him delay the meeting over email, order a greasy breakfast, and remember what his boss's pet is for small talk. The release came alongside the long-awaited mobile app, so you can chat to 11 Labs assistant on the go. Now, I'm not sure about the positioning of these assistants. I am a little more skeptical than most of these sort of generalist consumer assistants, but I could be very wrong. But still, once again, if some of the theme of the OpenAI productivity suite is the convergence of all of these platforms into one common set of features, this is yet again another example of that. Anyways, that is going to do it for today's AI Daily Brief Headlines edition. Next up, the main episode.